Anderson on your left, Ross Merriam on your right. Get ready to do battle here. Again, both these players are qualified for our Players' Championship next weekend. So again, this could be a prelude to something that we do see in Roanoke at the Star City Game Center next week in December 19th and the 20th. Good way to start off day number 2.
Yeah, for Todd Anderson, he started out 7-0, lost to Jerry Thompson to end day 1. For Ross Merriam, he actually picked up his loss early yesterday in Standard and then ran the table through the modern rounds of the event.
I did get to watch that match between Thompson and Anderson yesterday. Jerry Thompson, our lone 8-0 here this weekend. He's on top of the standings right now, and given his invitational history, I'd be pretty scared if I were the competition. Looks like he might be on his way to another invitational top 8, potentially a third invitational win here in Las Vegas. But we got a lot of rounds to figure that out, as Anderson's going to search up a sunken hollow here with a flooded strand.
Yeah, and you mentioned it. Seeing Jerry Thompson at the top of the standings after day 1 on an invitational, it comes as a surprise to just about no one.
Jace here on turn number 2 from Anderson. Going to search up a mountain with that Bloodstained Mire, so he's going to fall down to 18. I think for Ross, pretty important that he's gotten off to a pretty quick start here with the Warden. A lot of the times this deck can be slow off of the ground. Merriam's going to sacrifice a Flooded Strand, go get himself a basic Plains, make the Warden into a 3-3. It's up to level number 1, and that's how his day will begin. Yeah, so on Ross's side, when he faces down to turn 2 Jace, because the deck only has maybe 5-6 ways to kill it, Dromoka's Command and Silk Wrap, there will frequently be times where Ross can't answer Todd's turn 2 Jace. And in those situations, it's really important for him that he has early sources of damage. Warden of the First Tree on turn 1 is one of the ways he can do that. Todd going to activate Jace, discard a Jace, play a Smoldering Marsh, and simply pass the turn back. What's interesting to note here is that Todd does have a copy of Roast in hand. No interest in firing it off on the Warden, saving it for something else, clearly. Yeah, and that really is an interesting one. One of the things that I think he wants to be conscious of is he has a fair number of life points to work with, and on top of Roast, he has a copy of Fiery Impulse in his hand. He's not that far away from being able to roast Ross's next play, or perhaps Crackling Doom it, loot a spell, and then Fiery Impulse and get all the creatures. Well, there's Nanofenza. That's a good roast target as well. So Anderson will draw a card. It's a Swamp. No white mana just yet here for Todd. Looks like he has at least 1 copy of Crackling Doom in hand. Yes, the way he may fix that, and I believe you're right, it's 2 copies of Crackling Doom, will be he can just simply loot them away with Jace. Fiery Impulse, the draw here off of Jace. Yeah, and here's a play which I think we were talking about him setting up. If he discards this Crackling Doom or Kolaghan's Command even, now he has Spell Mastery for his Fiery Impulse. So Fiery Impulse can take care of the Warden, and then he conveniently has a Roast to flash back to kill a Rhino. As far as creatures are concerned, he's all set up to kill them. Now here's the thing about Todd's deck as we go to Merriam's turn. The one weakness that he has, he's very soft to Gideon. Yeah, and this just shows some experience on Ross's side. I mean, you mentioned, I just want to talk about once again that sequencing of removal spells. I think that in this situation, you know, 80–90% of your players will just cast Roast immediately on that next turn. But for Todd to have the patience to realize that he needs to pair up Roasts and Crackling Dooms with larger creatures and get everything off the board nonetheless is really a heads-up play for Todd. There's a Rhino. Anderson's going to fall down to 9, I believe, while Merriam will gain a little bit of life here. And now we're going to head back Anderson's way again. Now we know he has already got the answer. Now he's picked up a copy of Flooded Strand. So there's the white mana that he was missing. That can dig out a Prairie Stream. And life is pretty good. Jace is going to fall down to 3. It's going to allow him to recast a Roast, take care of the Rhino. Now there is the Flooded Strand, and Anderson can pass the turn back. And now the only thing that he's really missing to this puzzle is just some card drawing. Yeah, I mean, that white mana has set everything up. If you look at his board, he's got a Jace in play, he has 3 kill spells in hand, he has another variety of kill spells in the graveyard. Nothing on Ross's side is going to stick for very long. Now, the good news for Ross is that Abzan, as a creature deck, oftentimes, even if you're killing every play as they cast it, they get so much incremental damage. You know, even when you kill a Rhino, you take 3. And so when Todd's at 9, he's still not completely safe yet. He's in a good spot. And yeah, his hand is very good right now. 2 Crackling Dooms and their Fire Impulse, and of course an active Jace. But he hasn't found a Painful Truce, hasn't found, you know, he was playing Treasure Cruise last weekend, he's playing Dig Through Time this weekend, just hasn't found the card drawing just yet. And actually, he's got the cruises over on his side, excuse me. Yeah, he has 3 cruises and 2 Painful Truths. This is card drawing today. But I mean, Painful Truths, you know, aptly named, right? Todd is at 9 life points right now. If he takes 3 off a Rhino that Ross could cast, Painful Truths, and he's really gonna have to thread the needle where his life points are concerned. And it's actually Jerry who's working with the Dig Through Times. Both these players playing the exact same deck, playing Jeskai Black. Todd finally got to Jerry, got him to switch the deck he was playing. For Merriam, you saw the fetch. Now you're going to see a Tasigur.
Going to delve away quite a bit of the graveyard.
The last concern here for Todd is that he has the only card he cannot remove is if Ross finds a Gideon on this board.
That's one of the cards he does not want to play against. And you can see exactly what Merriam's setting up here. He's got another Siege Rhino in his hand, so he's going to cast that. Anderson will take a look at his opening hand. He's going to cast a Crackling Doom here.
Yeah. And Todd's going to have to get both of these. If Ross untaps with any mana, Tasigur would go ahead and get Siege Rhino back.
But you mentioned the incremental damage here from the Rhinos. So one Crackling Doom is going to resolve. Todd's got another Crackling Doom in his hand that we might see him cast. Depends on what the draw step will be. But for him, he's looking for a card like Soulfire Grandmaster now, ways to gain life, Ojai's Command, stuff like that that'll help him kind of turn the corner. Because, again, he's in a good spot, but he's not in a great spot just yet. And Painful Truths, as you mentioned, is pretty painful right now.
Right. So you look at it, you know, the board, and you're right. Soulfire Grandmaster would be excellent here. All of Todd's removal would then start to gain him life, and then he'd be fairly safe. He's looking for a card like Treasure Cruise. Not Painful Truths. That's the one that he couldn't do.
Yeah, I'm actually okay with drawing a Shambling Vent here. It is a little bit of lifelink.
Yeah, and it's not like he doesn't need lots of lifelink. He would like to get to the point that if he draws a Painful Truths that he can cast it. And right now, that's a very risky thing to do.
Oh, yeah. Fire Impulse, Crackling Doom, Shambling Vent. That's the hand here for Todd Anderson. Going to reorganize the mana, see what he wants to do. He's going to cash in Jace. This is going to allow him to play, I believe, Kolagon's Command. Okay. Now Fire Impulse to finish this off. So I like this play.
Yeah, really interesting lines that Todd's taking. What he's been doing is he's been working very hard. This is the second time this game to make sure that his Fiery Impulses get as much value as possible. I think he is aware of the fact that Fiery Impulse can become dead very quickly in the matchup.
Heir of the Wilds, a Shambling Vent there for Merriam. He'll pass the turn back. Merriam does have Obzon Charm in hand, and Soulfire Grandmaster was the draw here for Todd Anderson.
Yeah, we talked about it before. This is a big draw for Todd. It will give his spells lifelink. If he gets to enough mana, he can start buying back his removal spells on top of it.
He'll start with Jace. And now he'll just pass the turn back with Crackling Doom at the ready. Not going to play the Grandmaster just yet. Obzon Charm here from Merriam. I believe he's going to pay 2 life to draw 2 cards. Got to get a little bit deeper into the deck.
For Merriam, he's just looking for Gideons or Siege Rhinos. Either of those could get that last point of damage across.
Might even have some interest in a card like Wingmate Rocker. Now, he has found a Gideon, and you have to imagine he's going to lead off with that. But he'll start with Anafenza, perhaps trying to play around a little bit of counter magic.
All right.
Here's a Crackling Doom in response.
Yeah, well, he'll want...
Actually, on the Crackling Doom after it resolves, pardon me.
Yeah, well, he'll want to play Anafenza, and the reason Ross went for that first is that in the absence of a removal spell, that does get the Ferocious trigger on Heir of the Wild, so it would have been an extra point of damage.
Here's Gideon. It'll bring a Knight Ally along with it. Now Anderson is at 3. He does have an active Jace. Going to need a pretty good draw step. Treasure Cruise is not a bad place to start.
No, I mean, we said the cards Todd needed were Treasure Cruise and Soulfire, and those have been the last 2 draws for Todd. But Resolved Gideon is a very difficult threat. It's really the only threat in Ross's deck that Jeskai Black just is at a loss to answer.
An activation of Jace. Soulfire Grandmaster was the draw. Soulfire Grandmaster down. Jace is going to flip.
Sometimes we even see Jeskai Black running 1 or 2 Jeskai Charms just to answer it. Todd with none in his list this weekend. Instead, he's gone for the bigger or Silumgar's Command, rather.
Yep. You'll find Utter End, too. There's one of that as well. You got to pay a lot to get getting off the board. Again, this is kind of the downside of not running Mantis Strider. Mantis Strider does such a great job of checking Gideon and every other Planeswalker. Treasure Cruise on the way here for Anderson.
It's going to be a full delve for it. Ancestral Recall here. Not too shabby, but remember, Todd at 3.
3 cards on the way. Jace, Monastery Mentor, and a Delta. So you can just dump some creatures on the board, but he doesn't have a lot of spells to work with. He's going to sacrifice the Delta, fall down to 2.
I mean, on board, the danger here is that Ross has 3 lethal attackers next turn.
You could actually argue 4, because he's got a Shambling Vent as well. So Gideon, Heir.
Sure, yeah, now that Todd's down to 2, now it's 4. At 3, Ross could have made an emblem and swung the team.
But you're right. Now it's 4 attackers.
This turn ends up being still pretty good here for Todd. He's going to play Monastery Mentor, Soulfire Grandmaster, and then recast Fiery Impulse. That'll gain him 3 life. That'll take care of Air of the Wilds. Now he can pass the turn back. He's sitting okay here. You can definitely tell right now, too, as Merriam's going to untap. Merriam's empty-handed. This is a big draw step for Ross, because if Todd's able to get through this turn, he can go absolutely nuts depending on what the draw step is.
Right. So whether or not, maybe Ross, it's very hard for him to win this turn, but what he does have going for him is, because Todd is at a lower life total of 5, it's possible that Ross can force a block out of Todd that he'd rather not make. I mean, the consolation prize for us is as long as he can get the Monastery Mentor or the Soulfire Grandmaster off the board, that would be a win as well.
I think he's got to get one of those off of the table. The text on each one of those cards is just too relevant.
You know, and this is the power of Jeskai Black, is that it's still this low to the ground deck. You know, its creatures are 2s and 3s, for example. But it's especially its cards, Monastery Mentor, Soulfire Grandmaster, Jace Vryn's Prodigy. These are really small, cheap creatures. They're so impactful in the late game.
He's going to fire up the vent. Gideon's coming up. Is this Dromoka's command? Oh, what a draw.
It's a big draw.
Counter is going to go on to the Knight ally. Everything's going to attack here.
And keep in mind, because the damage to Gideon is prevented, the life, this is a really smart play on Ross's side.
Yep.
There is no life link for Todd. I mean, it's there, but the damage is never dealt, so he stays at 5. So Ross will get both the Mentor and the Soulfire on this attack.
It was very important for Ross to get a lot off the board. We were talking about, can he get either Soulfire Grandmaster or Mentor off the board? He's gotten the entire board clear now. Jace is going to tick up. Going to slow down the Knight ally. Here is a Jace. Now keep in mind, Todd, as he's going to grab the Shambling Vent there, kind of make it known that, yes, I do have this down there. But what a huge draw there from Merriam in the Dromoka's command as we head back Ross's way.
Yeah, big play for Ross there.
Now can he cross the finish line? Anderson at 3. You obviously don't want to let him stabilize.
Well, once again, he's got 2 lethal attackers. He has a Shambling Vent as well. Now, keep in mind, Todd does have a Vent of his own and the mana to activate it.
Ross wants to see exactly what's in Todd's graveyard. Figure out how to attack this turn. Figure out how to use Gideon this turn. I think most likely outcome is that Gideon's just going to go up to 6, become a 5/5, and come across in the red zone again. But a couple of options here for sure. That's why you see Ross taking his time on his turn.
Yeah, that one's certainly tempting.
And the other thing is we don't know what the draw step was here for Merriam. Although he is tapping mana.
Yeah, I believe the draw step was Warden of the First Tree.
Okay.
Which is actually very strong on this board.
Yeah, it's just another thing to kind of gas back up with. Shambling Vent going to go active here for Anderson. Blocks will be declared here shortly, as no Dromoka's command here to intervene.
Remember that ally is a 1/3 because of Jace's ability last turn.
Very notable.
Yeah, it does mean that Jace can block it and live.
Yep.
So that next turn, Todd could -3 the Jace that's currently a Planeswalker and then get another Planeswalker. He'll have a lot of options available to him now, and until need them, he's going to be still at 3 when the turn's done.
And it looks like he's going to be losing his Shambling Vent in this exchange as well, because it looks like it's going to be jumping in front of Gideon.
And this time, he'll be down to 1, because once again, that damage prevention means he won't gain the life.
Now that is an important clause there on old Gideon. There is Warden of the First Tree. Pass the turn back. Anderson will take a draw step. Picked up a Polluted Delta. Not sure about outs now. He's going to cash this in.
Yeah, can't even crack the fetch lands for mana as he's at 1.
Soulfire Grandmaster is the draw. Now what's notable here, we're not entirely sure what Todd did target with the flashback effect on Jace, but he used that first. He targeted Treasure Cruise. Okay,
yeah, that
so
one
he's
makes
looking,
sense.
Okay, he's looking to gas back up.
Looks like another full Treasure Cruise.
For his deck, it's so easy.
I mean, yeah, right? He's dealt 14 cards to 2 Treasure Cruises. That's unbelievable.
It's silly. 3 cards, well, 3 lands. See you later.
Yeah, I mean, and we talk how nice that is about having 2 treasure cruises, but that's just not enough. Even with all the extra cards, Obzon aggro, too efficient.
Ross Merriam going to win game number 1 here over Todd Anderson. Obzon aggro up a game here over Jeskai Black as these players are going to go to the sideboards. We are going to do the same here. We'll start with Todd Anderson. His 2 Dispels, his 3 Negates, 3 Radiant Flames, 2 Irrational Clerics, a Kolagon's Command, an Ob Nixilis Reignited, a Painful Truths, and 2 copies of Roast. What do you like here in this matchup and why?
All right, well, we've looked at how Todd Anderson's removal lined up there. And one of the things that he did game 1 is he was very hesitant on Fiery Impulses because he was worried that they get dead. I think that what he'll go toward is the more, towards, for example, the extra copies of Roast. I think he's happy to have spells that will always trade for Ross's creatures. On top of that, I wouldn't be surprised for him to go to even more card advantage. Maybe the extra Painful Truth, a copy of Ob Nixilis Reignited. These are all very interesting. I think he's going to go into a more control shell of kill all the creatures.
For Ross Merriam, he's got 2 Irrational Clerics, 2 Hallowed Moonlight, a Surge of Righteousness, another copy of Wingmate Rock, 3 Duress, Transgress the Mind as far as discard is concerned, and then 2 Self-Inflicted Wound, 2 Ultimate Price, and a Sauron Solemn Visitor.
Well, we saw how good Gideon was that game, and that's because despite of all the efficient removal and ways to recur that Jeskai Black has, it has a weakness to Planeswalkers. The copy of Sauron Solemn Visitor is very good in the matchup for that reason, and that one will come in. On top of that, I think he's going for threats that are difficult to answer, so I'm going to look toward a Wingmate Rock. He has 2 in the main and can go up to 3, though it's hard for him to raid the Wingmate Rock if he ever pulls it off. And it's not a 0% that he can pull it off. A pair of 3/4s is actually very difficult for Todd to answer. When you look at his removal, remember, Roast can't hit flyers, for example.
It's a steady stream of threats that we saw Ross win that particular game with, and Gideon helps provide that, and so does Wingmate Rock. So we'll see if Merriam does board that in. But in the meantime, as these players do converse and shuffle up here for game number 2, we're talking the Fall Creature Collection here with Star City Games. We've got playmat sleeves and player bundles of some of your game night favorites. That means the Otter, the Hippo, the Reindeer, and Penguillion. Click starcitygames.com/creature collection for more information about that, and definitely keep your eyes peeled for the Winter 2016 collection that'll be coming out relatively soon. But we're going to turn our attention back to the match because we got a good one to start today.
So every time I've said Penguillion click,
you can do it.
I feel no. I feel like we're in Lorwyn. I think like like the Gwillions, and then I get all messed up because I know that Vendilion clicks in Lorwyn, but they're not like they're before the Aurora, right?
And I believe they're before the Aurora. I believe. I don't know the Lorwyn lore as well as I used to. That's the only Magic book that I've read. I got really excited about that set because the elves were bad guys.
Yeah, because they kind of like believe themselves to be the best race. They're really, right?
It's very important that they're perfect. Imperius perfect is obviously a great description of that. But yeah, they're beautiful and they're perfect and all of those things. I thought it was actually a nice change in pace. Maybe the elves have always been bad, but
wait. But Riss is the hero, right? He's the elf who he doesn't buy into the whole elf thing.
Correct.
Okay.
It would have been nice if Riss was actually a good card.
He was after he got redeemed. Then he was a Commander All-Star, but the first one is not
particularly.
No,
good.
he's a 3/2 for 4.
I can't remember, unfortunately. Good old Riss, but there was a lot of flavor in that set, and I'm hoping as Magic keeps revisiting old sets, like we're going back to Innistrad soon. I hope we go back to Lorwyn at some point. I liked Tribal, and it's not because I like Kithkin. I just liked that format, Giants and Changelings, and I liked. That was a lot. That was when I was playing Magic a lot during college, but I really liked that format. There, Riss the Exile.
For 3/2 for 3.
What
My mistake.
A deal. What a deal. Unbelievable. Sack an elf. Wow, Riss will just kill elves to save himself. Unbelievable.
Kills his own people. I don't know. It is a very black ability.
Yeah, it is. We're underway here in game number 2. Anderson with a Jace. Sacrifice the Bloodstained Mire. Now, what's interesting, you watch that first game, right? Todd gets a Jace, flips the Jace, kills a bunch of creatures, ends up losing the game. Took a little while to gas back up. Didn't have Soulfire Grandmaster online. And, it's kind of a weird result in just you see him with the hand that he had in the mid-game. You're thinking, man, it's going to be a pretty hard game to lose, but he did lose it. So we'll see how this one shakes out.
I mean, there are very few decks that can let a Jeskai player flip a turn to Jace and not care, but Obzon's one of them.
Silkrap's going to take care of the Jace. Anderson with a plane, so he'll pass the turn back. Always important when you're playing against a Jace deck to kind of have an answer for it in the early game, I think. I'm never comfortable with letting someone just go kind of active with Jace.
Yeah, well, I guess maybe I'll rephrase. What I like about Obzon is that when you say you have to have an answer for the Jace, you're right, but its answer doesn't always have to be Silkrap. Sometimes its answer can just be
a bunch of 3/3s. And I think that counts. You know, we saw how Ross was able to just play efficient creatures and in that way kind of get around Jace.
Merriam played his Anafenza into the graveyard, assuming it to get countered or killed, but that did not happen. Anderson's draw step for the turn was a painful truth.
Ooh, painful indeed.
And he's taken 3. He'll play a Flooded Strand, pass the turn back, but gassing back up is pretty powerful, and one of the cards that he does have in his hand now is Obs Nicholas Reignited.
Yeah, I mean, this hand for Todd is great. He's got a pair of Fiery Impulses, Ob Nixilis. He's flush on removal, but now he's got to look up in that corner and look at the life total. Obzon does not waste time in chopping away at your life.
And you see another 4-power creature come to the battlefield here in Tassiger. Anderson going to draw. He's found a mountain.
Right, and that's the difficulty. You know, Fiery Impulse is a really great, efficient removal spell. I mean, in Todd's deck, it's a great bet to be 3 damage, but look at Todd's board. He's not letting Fiery Impulse matter.
Yeah, you know, he's got 3 Fire Impulses in hand, and I imagine it's not the sexiest play in the world to play a Soulfire Grandmaster here and double impulse a creature, but hey, it gets it off the table. And you get to gain, he'll get to gain 5 life in the exchange.
Yeah, if their Lightning Helix is there, then we're happier. Now, he does need a second red, though, if he wants to make that play, if you look here.
Well, he did draw a mountain for the turn. I was actually a little bit surprised that he didn't play the double Fiery Impulse turn. He's just going to play Ob Nixilis, pass the turn back.
Wow,
But
okay.
this will also be kind of a fog, right? Because Anafenza has to kill it.
I mean, this just read as kill target creature, gain 4 life. It was a good kill spell, but there was a risk involved in it, and Ross is showing him just what that risk was.
You mentioned Wingmate Rock and how powerful it can be in the matchup. It's going to bring a 3/4 rock along with it. And now we're going to head back Merriam's way in just a moment. Todd did, of course, get to play a Soulfire Grandmaster.
All right, so we have a Grandmaster. We have 3 Fiery Impulses, but they just, everything has to have 4 toughness. It's, ugh.
I mean, it's nice that he gets to gain a bunch of life here.
Yeah, absolutely. But I mean, boy, Ross just not cooperating, and maybe, you know, what he would give for Ross to play maybe a Warden, right?
Yep.
How about one of those Air of the Wilds?
I think Todd might be thinking, okay, he's just going to pass the turn back. He paused Ross for a moment there. 4 toughnesses might just be the key against these Obzon aggro, or excuse me, against these Jeskai Black decks.
When Todd has to 2-for-1 himself to kill creatures, you start to feel like his card advantage doesn't matter as much.
Yep. Interesting, too, because this deck could have access to a card like Planar Outburst if it wanted it, but at the same time, part of what makes Todd's deck appealing is a card like Soulfire Grandmaster and Jace, where you don't really want to wipe away your own creatures.
Exactly. It does give him weakness, however. You see, Ross was able to keep in all his Silk Wraps. I believe he has a second one for the Soulfire.
Yep. Merriam going to sacrifice a Flooded Strand. He'll get himself a Plains. What's interesting to me, too, here is, you know, as we watch Ross play this game, not doing anything too flashy.
No, it's pretty straightforward. But I mean, that, you know, Obzon isn't a flashy deck. So whenever I think of Obzon, you know, okay, to use a sports analogy, you know, like that boxer who he punches really hard, and maybe he's not all that agile. Maybe he doesn't always like find your weakness, but he'll punch real hard. And even if you block his punch, it's gonna hurt. And if you block enough of them or you take enough of them, he's gonna get you one way or another. That's kind of how I always feel about Obzon. It's like, okay, maybe you kill all my creatures, maybe you don't. But if I play enough of them, I don't care. You're gonna be dead at the end of it.
Eventually you'll die. That's certainly the case. Here's Treasure Cruise to go along with Monastery Mentor. Gonna gas back up, make a Monk token. Entire graveyard is gone. Fiery Impulse, Bloodstained Mire, Smoldering Marsh, I believe were the draws. All Anderson can do is pass the turn back over to Merriam. We know that Obzon, it throws haymakers. That's really all that it does.
Right, and yeah.
Just a Siege Rhino. Another haymaker.
Sure, okay, you killed it. That's fine. You took 3, right?
Yep. All these 4 toughness creatures out here on the battlefield for Merriam. It's going to figure out how he wants to attack here in this instance.
And you know, and it really just, I love the different dynamic in this matchup. So, okay, yeah, Todd has great card advantage. You know, Treasure Cruise, he drew 3 cards for 1 mana again. But then we go back, and then he has to spend 2 spells to kill a creature. It's like, well, okay, now we're backing up. He's undoing the cards he's drawing.
2 Fiery Impulses in hand right now for Todd. I think a Soulfire Grandmaster as well. He's got to make it through this turn alive, and there's no guarantee of that.
But if he can get back to that spot where he has Soulfire and Mentor in play and starts to cast Fiery Impulses, okay, that's a lot of card advantage.
Yeah, especially if you can start buying back those Fiery Impulses. And the interesting thing here is, you know, Ross is almost on E. He's almost out of cards. We know he's got a Siege Rhino land in his hand. And he's also got a Shambling Vent, but it feels like Abzan never runs out of cards. Seems like they've always got something coming for the draw step.
Well, it's because you spend 2 or 3 cards answering them, but you're answering one of their cards. So if you want to answer, 6 of Ross's creatures, you're going to need 11 cards to do it.
Yep. Here come the beatdowns. Anafenza is going to give a counter to the Wingmate Rock token.
Yeah, Ross going to go for the token instead of the original one because I think he wants to make his creatures. He doesn't want to go all in on one creature. He wants to pump up his worst creature, and that's the token here.
Yeah, diversify as much as possible. Looks like 7 damage is going to come through. The Monk token from Understanding Mentor is going to jump in front of Anafenza.
Remember, the Fiery Impulse is in his hand.
It's important that he does it now because he only has 1 sorcery / instant in his graveyard.
So it'll prowess up to a 2/2, and then the Fiery Impulse will deal points 3 and 4.
Correct. So that's an important play there. Also, he gets to replace his Monk. Rhino's going to come down.
You just feel Ross winding up for another big punch here.
Oh, yeah. Anderson's at 1. Merriam will play his Smoldering Marsh. He's empty-handed past the turn back. It's a big draw step here for Anderson. Roasts the draw.
If he has that Soulfire you're talking about, it would do it, but he does not.
Ross Merriam going to win this match here over Todd Anderson 2-0. Abzan aggro is going to take care of Jeskai Black. And for Abzan and for Ross, just grinded Todd down, kept drawing threats, kept casting them. And even though Todd Anderson's deck has a lot of removal, he did not find enough. Ross Merriam going to move on to 8-1 here this morning from Las Vegas.